We've been talking for like over an hour. I completely forgot we were even going to talk about From Dusk Till Dawn, the series.
Yeah, sorry guys, and it was good shit too.
Oh man, yo, too bad you can't hear any of
We
it.
didn't get to hear all that kind of stuff, man. One of us even told the other one where the antidote's at.
Oh, scandalous.
Oh my goodness! So let's get it out the way. We are off the rails now, folks.
Here's the thing, like, this is maybe why I should be more optimistic about shows, I guess, because all right, a few episodes ago when I'm like, man, fuck, I would have quit watching this show by now. I'm only here just because we're doing a podcast on it, and I'm like, this is gonna just whatever. I'm checked out. I don't see anything fucking coming of this. You were still optimistic about it. You were like, you know what, this could still surprise us. This could still, I don't know, it could turn into something. At least for our sakes, I'm hoping it's going to turn into something. And you know what? Maybe I should have been really optimistic like you, because this episode was fucking amazing.
This came the fuck out of nowhere, didn't it?
Yeah.
And once again, it kind of proves what we were saying. If you had gotten all the movie shit out of the way by episode 4, so you could go off on your own new direction with this established cast of characters and setting, there's all kind of options. Because this one I saw none of this coming.
Me neither. I did not think it would go in this direction. I did not think the quality would increase like this. This is easily, hands down, the best episode of the series.
I would have to co-sign you on that one at this point.
Like,
not to mention the fact that I know it couldn't be just me. Man, those last two names in the credits when you saw them, weren't you like, oh
my God, we're getting Bill Sadler and James Remar in one episode?
I was like, holy crap. And then, of course, did you catch the little nod and wink of how Remar was dressed? You get the impression he might have been named a color at one point in his life?
Oh, yeah, he did have the black tie suit on.
Just like the kiddies.
Yeah. I wonder if they originally approached Michael Madsen.
And once they weren't able to roust him out of his sound drunken sleep, they moved on.
I love Remar. Two great things about these parts. One, I love how Remar is like just playing the dads of killers now.
Yeah, which makes, in hindsight, a lot of sense.
Yeah, right? Like, I know I'm being snarky about that, but he's a night and day, his character from Dexter.
Oh, yeah.
But also, Bill Sadler, I love how, unlike Machete Kills, Bill Sadler is here. He's playing a character. Honestly, he's kind of playing the most interesting man in the world.
Yeah. Didn't you get... He kind of they gave him his moment. They knew they were getting a star for that because they wrote that script for an actor to play with.
Yeah, and they gave him Dos Equis to drink, too.
Yeah, I caught that, too. I was like, are we making a connection here?
Yeah, like, okay, he's the most interesting man in the world, is like this kind of diamond guy. But he is 100% he's playing a real character. He's got great dialogue in here. You totally get this guy. In this one speech that he gives, you totally get everything about this dude. Unlike Machete Kills, which was just, isn't it cool because this guy is played by Bill Sadler.
See, man, I'm starting to think maybe that'll be my Kickstarter. Force Mr. X to watch Machete Kills. He'll riff live to it.
You never know. You might like it.
I might, but I thought the synthesis of the original Machete was something that kind of, unless you were going to really finesse it to take it over the top without being over the top.
Here's the thing. If you loved the Machete don't tweet thing so much to where you would want to see that happen 20 times in a single movie, you will love Machete Kills.
Considering the fact that, unfortunately, thanks to his marketing team, Machete did in fact tweet.
Yeah.
Was kind of a problem to begin with.
Uh-huh.
Machete don't tweet. I saw so many replies saying, except for apparently here. And
Fucking
it was
hypocrite.
all over Twitter.
Shetty may be a badass, but he's a fucking hypocrite.
I need my machetes to stay true to their vision.
The only good thing that Machete Kills did was it killed off Jessica Alba in the first scene.
Was that her clause for coming back?
I have no idea.
Because that feels like Nancy Allen in RoboCop 3.
Now here's what it was. It was like we want to do a sequel, but we really don't want to bring that character back. So I guess we got to kill her off in the opening scene.
Oh, so they used Austin Powers
I
logic.
was just gonna say, yeah, Heather Graham and Austin Powers logic. That's totally what it was. But this was insanity. This
Yeah.
was like
I
I
was a
don't
little worried for you too, because when they got to their little descent homage, that camera started getting all. They increased the frame rate,
was a little
and
dissent
I was
there.
like, "Oh boy, here we go again. I'm about to get that call."
Yeah, it was the descent with Gollum's wardrobe. This is probably all confusing for people who have not seen
Yeah, if
this
you haven't
episode.
seen this episode, you know what? This might be the only one you need to see at this point.
Yeah, I don't even know how to describe it. But you are right. Like, if this show just condensed all the remake of the movie shit they were doing into like 2 episodes, and you could, okay, here's my recommendation now for the show. Like, I know we still have 1 episode left, but here's my recommendation now for the show. Watch the first episode and then skip to like episode 5 or 6.
I would have no problem with that. We had to pick the corn out of that shit.
Yeah, you could so easily do that because, okay, you watch episode 1 because that'll show you the Gecko brothers. That'll introduce you to the deputy. From that, you know that the deputy wants revenge on them. But but just skip to 5 or 6 because if you've seen the movie, you know about the Fullers. You know that they've taken them hostage.
And you might frankly like them better than we do by missing all that flotsam and jetsam.
Honestly, yeah, because still, even in this episode, the only annoying thing about it was Kate Fuller saying, like, Richard Gecko is just a tortured soul. I'm like, okay,
That's because she sees the light in people.
oh my
So
God.
much so that every character must mention this.
With that line, I'm like, okay, fuck, slow down, Bella Swan. Easy there.
Yeah, Mary Sue's starting to piss me off.
But that's so minimal of this thing. Like, she did, okay, that was like really kind of the only thing that she did that annoyed me. But this episode, much like a previous episode did with kind of warming me up to the deputy,
Mhm.
I thought Jake Busey was creepy in this.
Yeah, it finally worked. Now suddenly his goofiness kind of has a point.
Yeah, I mean,
He was hiding the fact that he's not all he appears to be.
yeah, I mean, I still don't really like. I'm still not sold on why they had to make him Sex Machine.
Because you had to say Sex Machine and you had to say Frost. Remember, we predicted that all the way back in episode 1.
Yeah, that's really the only reason why he's called Sex Machine is just because, okay, it reminds you of
This
the movie. All
It's
right.
kind of like the Star Trek philosophy. You got to mention tribbles. You got to say, "Damn it, Jim, I'm not a fascinating captain." Put
Yeah.
phasers on stun. You have to hit these notes, and that's. I bet you they had a checklist.
I'm sure they did, and that's the show's weakness. It totally is, because Jake Busey, you didn't have to make him Sex Machine. Yeah, okay, you can make him like this undercover biker, sure, because that makes sense now. Like they've given
And you were willing to kill off Frost. You could have killed off a different Sex Machine who was Sex Machine too.
yeah, and in this, like they gave reason why he's undercover there as a biker. You could have just left Sex Machine out of it, but
Yeah, because it colors the character in a way that still not making sense for me. Did he turn the character into a pure overcompensation joke?
yeah, why does he
Or
still?
does this actually work and he just picked the wrong bait with Kate Fuller?
Yeah, it still doesn't make sense why he'd have that fucking cock gun. But that cock gun is not even in this episode.
Yeah, I noticed. I was very grateful for that too, because I kept feeling, don't fuck this up at the end by having the cock gun come
But
out.
he's fucking
Please do not.
crazy. Like, you know what? I'll even say, I meant to say this last week, but we got off on so many tangents. I meant to say this last week. The one thing that I will say about Jake Busey, like even last week, I was like, oh my God, this Sex Machine thing, just stop. But I will say the only good thing I could have said last week and episodes before is that at least it looks like Jake Busey is having fun.
Yeah, he looks like he's having a blast.
Yeah, Jake Busey is having fun playing this part. He
The same way
clearly
it looked
is.
like I think Sadler was having a blast, and we can already tell that Johnson was having the time of his life.
Remar is having a good time. I think they're all having a good time in this. Obviously, Valderrama is.
Oh
Um,
yeah, no doubt.
I really
The
think
only
they
one who
are.
looks like he's kind of pissed off to be there is Scott.
Yeah,
It's just, I'm sorry, kid. Acting ain't for everybody.
we.
It ain't just the words. You're kind of a non-presence. Even as a vampire, I didn't. They made sure that scene with him killing the golems was extra graphic, but I didn't buy the menace for it for a second.
No, no. Like he's only there as clause. Well, one because okay, he's in the movie, but in terms of story purposes, he's just there just to give the Fullers a reason to stay at the bar.
Right, because at this point, clearly, should have moved on.
Here's what this episode this it gives you every reason why they were luring Richard Gecko, the Gecko brothers, to the bar. It gives you a reason. Not only does it give you a reason for that, but it makes sense.
Especially since they did foreshadow it.
Yeah,
Remember
they did.
Busey's line where he talked about, don't underestimate them.
Yeah,
You ever hear the tale of the two brothers?
she's Santanico Pandemonium is using the Gecko brother, Richard Gecko specifically, as her tool for finally getting set free from the bar. So again, yeah, Valderrama is the bad. Carlos is the bad guy.
Yeah, he is the big bad.
He is the big, which I'm 100% cool.
Yeah, me too. I would prefer Santanico as the reluctant villain at this point because, frankly, that's all that character can handle.
Yeah, I agree. That was a smart decision. And this episode goes into like, man, there's some really clever things about this.
First of all, they brought back that bank teller.
Oh yeah, Gordita, Gordita. Is that the pet
Yeah, that,
name?
that was her little nickname, my little gordita.
Gordita. I'm gonna have to do that sometime. Use that Taco Bell menu item as a pet. Come here, my beefy burrito crunch.
Come
Uh,
here, come here, my cinnamon crispus.
uh, Come here, my little waffle taco. Oh, you're my AM crunch rat, baby.
Hell, we
Spicy.
can apply this to anything. It's about time for you to have your slider.
Well, now I'm 100% cool with that. That one worked. White Castle's the greatest fucking restaurant in the world.
Oh yeah, it's the only meat I eat, folks. I am technically a vegetarian. I only eat lacto oval. If you want to sound like a pretentious dick.
Insert joke about, well, you can still eat that and be a vegetarian because it's not meat.
Yeah, that actually is still the joke I use on meat eaters to justify it.
There
But
you
in
go.
my own head, I go, you know what? All the White Castles I eat in a year probably equal 2 Big Macs.
Oh, I
I'll be all right.
I figured I had to lampshade that joke before several comments did.
Because you knew it was coming.
Yeah.
Now, I
Um,
will say this. I do believe it's real meat. I just do believe whatever process they stumbled across by accident back in 1940 or whenever they started
uh,
changes meat. Because we can all acknowledge, we all love White Castles, but there is no other sandwich on the planet that has such a predictable gastronomical side effect.
maybe my body is just used to that because White Castle doesn't affect my.
Well, you are the person who drank a can of Billy Beer that should have killed you.
Well, I'm not saying that it doesn't affect it. I'm just saying that like it doesn't affect me any more than anything else fast food related does. Uh, at the end of the day, for me, I'm like all I care about is if it's delicious.
Exactly. And sometimes you gotta suffer for your food. I'm a big fan of incredibly spicy foods, yet I get
Me too.
hiccups that are comical.
Me too. My
Like people laugh and I'm like, stop laughing, this shit hurts. But
My
damn
problem
it,
is the
spicy
fire
food.
hole. My problem is 100% the fire hole. I love spicy food. I can handle spicy food really well. Maybe not as well as Brian, but who does?
Yeah, I was gonna say he is a mutant. You know this, right?
Yeah. But I handle spicy food just fine. But my problem isn't so much of the intake; it's totally the fire hole. Oh my God, it's sheer freaking pain, man. This episode does so many clever things. They basically turn the interior temple portion of the bar into like this. Hellraiser 2 Hellbound Maze.
Yeah, it felt like that. It had that kind of vibe to it.
Hmm.
And I appreciated their restraint that they said The Shining instead of making a Garrett the Goblin King reference.
That was
'Cause when they
still
said Labyrinth,
clunky.
I thought it was clunky. But I think mentioning David Bowie would have been clunkier. And when I heard Labyrinth, I was like, oh God, don't. Please don't. Because
That was still,
that would be grade school Tarantino. I
yeah,
would say this was middle school Tarantino.
I guess it was still like,
Yeah, it was tossing it out there as a abnormally obvious wink to the audience.
yeah, it was easily the clunkiest line in the episode where he says like you it's a labyrinth. Oh, you mean like the hedge maze from The Shining? Like,
I
come
get
on.
it. I get
Like,
it.
there's okay, there's believe me, I know because like I look at the Snob movie. They mention titles all over that movie, but there's a
Right.
diff you can easily contextual wise write in references to other movies in a conversation
That makes sense.
that totally make obviously like really clever dialogue can do that. Tarantino does that all the time. There's a difference between having your characters mention a movie or mention a song, then okay, that the
Then
way that they're
turning into
doing,
the action movie equivalent of a Seltzer Freebird kind of joke,
yeah,
where
that
it's
would be
got
like
on the
if
nose and put there just to be there.
at the end of the Snob movie, I walk in, I'm like, oh my god, this is totally like that scene from Bone. Like, what? So like you can yeah you could there's a right way and a wrong way to do that, and this keeps doing the wrong way, but that's I don't want
Yeah, I've kind of given up on that. And by the for the record, and I'm hoping that's the only time I've said that because I that's starting to become a tick for me.
to
Um, this was another script by the I don't want to just say the Jews, but but their names are really easy to notice because all the other writers are Hispanic,
uh-huh.
so their names kind of stand out to me. And they seem to be the ones more than anyone else. Their scripts for the show are the ones that have had like the clunkiest pop culture references in them.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if maybe that's their tick.
uh
Same way I keep always saying for the record.
I kind of think that it's just kind of trying to be very Tarantino-ish.
To which at this point I feel we can abandon that. It
Yeah,
doesn't need it anymore. It's now its own animal.
yeah.
I mean, you can toss that shit in there, but don't feel the need that we haven't done it in a while, so we need to do it.
Yeah,
The best kind of writing to me is the ones where, no, you didn't have to think of it. It came to you, and you went, no, this makes sense.
I'll at least say this. They are keeping it to just one character doing this. It's always Seth.
Yeah, it's always Seth.
It's always Seth Gecko who's doing
And I'm
this.
glad he returned to protagonist status this
Oh,
episode.
absolutely. I'm glad that it was very this was very Seth heavy, whereas the
And
last
also, it was the Seth we remember, not the Seth that's been pissing us off because
oh
he was
yeah.
kind of character. His character was in flux the last couple of episodes.
Yeah, well, the last episode he was very much in the background. Um,
Yeah, commenters actually mentioned that. They were like, what happened to the star of the show?
yeah, and in the movie, like when it got to the bar, it became very ensemble. It totally did. But
Yeah, it
yes,
stopped being TNG and it became DS9 for a minute there.
yeah, and so that was something I didn't really notice last week, but when it was pointed out to me, I did.
I know a lot of shows have started building this into it. They may not be referencing this exact moment,
Yeah,
but there's a danger to having your lead character carry too much of the weight of the
uh-huh.
show if it's an intense show or an action-based show. Because if you go back and I mean, unfortunately, that's why we ended up with Kim being chased by the Panther.
Oh God.
But this all came from Law and Order: Criminal Intent.
Hmm.
D'Onofrio was in so many consecutive scenes of that show because he
Uh-huh.
was really the draw until people realized it was the dynamic between him and Eames that really made the show work.
Yeah.
That he suffered from exhaustion. And literally, that's how we ended up with the shows where Chris Noth returned. Because he was like, somebody's got to share this load with me. I've got like 40 pages of script to
I
read
gotcha.
a week.
Hmm.
So I understand when they kind of rotate those moments to give the actors kind of time to heal, especially since if you know a
Yeah.
big action show is coming up, which means he's going to be with second unit for a lot and exhausted.
Uh-huh.
Now, I will say this. One of the things I really dug about this episode is that I saw one of the most perfect examples of how you mix practical and CGI effects.
So did I.
Was
That
it that explosion?
Well, it was the explosion, and when who was it who got bit? When
Oh,
Richie,
Richie Britt Pritchard.
okay, when Richie bit Pritchard, that looked good.
Yeah, I did not mind the stretchy skin CGI because the way they shot it and the darkness of it and the fact that they do what I call I always feel you can get away with CGI blood more when it's that darker red blood that blood really doesn't look like, but you're used to it in the movies.
Yeah, yeah. And in this, it was too quick for me to notice. It didn't linger on it. It didn't linger on it as heavily as it's lingered on other stuff in the past. To me anyway, it focused more on the practical effect of the skin and shit coming from
Right.
Richard's mouth. That was what I noticed way more in that shot than anything that would have been fake.
And I'm also wondering if I should actually go back at some point and look at who edited which episodes, because I know a couple of them Rodriguez edited. And I'm
Oh,
wondering if we're going to see longer lingering on special effects during the Rodriguez edited episodes, because I get it. You made those effects. And sometimes you got to separate yourself from all your hard work and go, I got to cut it a little bit.
well, I thought the explosion looked fine.
The explosion looked awesome to me, and I could tell there was some CGI enhancement,
Hmm.
and they pulled what I call the prodigal son trick,
Yeah.
where to imply explosion, you have a whole bunch of burning paper fly around, like with Crockett when he shot down that helicopter.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, yeah.
it works. It does work if you
Uh-huh.
sell it, and I thought they sold that. And the way that they obscured the actor throwing himself against the wall made it look really good to me.
Were you
I
also
thought that shot was really impressive as we were watching Oceana Cinco y Seis.
I love that whole sequence. And also, did you also get a Vice vibe when they were driving through the city?
Oh yes, I was like, wow, are we really going there?
Oh, I was
Okay,
glad they went
Rodriguez,
there, man.
go ahead. He literally had the slow motion walk, the
Mhm.
quick cutting as they entered the car, the close up of the car door closing. Did we get the close up of the wheels spinning or the back of the car zipping away, sort of shit?
I I love how just unpredictable this was because they find a door that leads outside uh
To
that
another
leads
dimension.
yeah, they think it's to the parking lot, but Seth Gecko goes outside and it's I don't even know how to describe it.
It's the
It's
it's
like
the
hell.
dank what it's the dank Michael Mann warehouse of the soul.
Yeah, it's like mixed in with the concept of like hell from like uh Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Yeah, actually, that's actually a really good one. It's that kind of esoteric concept of hell.
It
Like
was
hell is what you bring with you.
yeah, and so basically for them to get out of it and to also rescue Santanico, which is what Richard is kind of wanting to do, they have to reenact the heist that got Seth put in prison to begin with. And that's where Bill Sadler comes in because he's the guy's got all these diamonds. And so he has to realize how he fucked up the first time around, how he's going to do it right this time. Only this time, they're also vampires, the people he's
And
going up
not just
against.
vampires, but since they're fucking with your head, they're throwing up people that have been obstacles in your life, playing the people that you originally interacted with. Like the prison guy that beat up Seth was the bodyguard.
Yeah. And
Pritchard was there. You had what was his name? Mean old bastard.
mean old bastard. Mean old bastard.
The fucking clerk from the liquor store.
Yeah, that's really clever. I
And to
like
be honest, it took me a minute to figure out that was him because he looks so radically different than his character.
it took me a little bit too. And also his dad getting thrown in there with timing him on putting the gun back together because that's what he used to do to him as a child. That was a really well acted scene.
It was, and it said so much about why the geckos are the way they are.
Oh yeah, Richard Gecko sets him on fire. Sets James Remar on fire. That was that is great stuff. And also the casting of Remar.
But they said he was always the smart one.
Yeah, exactly, and the casting of Remar is great because
It really is.
because it's showing adult Seth now doing what he was forced to do as a kid, and you need an actor like Remar in there.
Where the
Who is-
gravitas just oozes off. You
Yeah,
know he's a threat.
who is more intimate. You need someone in there who, in that moment, can be more intimidating than Seth Gecko. And
And
James
it
Remar is
works.
perfect for that.
He is the same way that, as much as it enhanced Richie's cool this episode, I was still a little concerned for him in his scenes with Bill Sadler.
See, yeah, me too. That was a
I
great
mean,
back and forth between him and
that
Bill
really
Sadler.
was, and I'm digging the fact that Richie seems to be a little bit more on the ball than we gave him credit for, even with the whole "I'm now a vampire" thing.
What I loved about when he turned into the vampire was when it's showing his wounds heal, it's showing the hole in his hand heal, but the one thing that surprises him was, holy crap, I have 20/20 vision now.
Well, you and I both can totally understand that now, can't
Right, I love
we?
that.
That would be the first thing that I would notice too.
That was even after watching the hole in his hand heal, like it's the 20/20 vision that's surprising him.
See, you folks that don't wear glasses just don't get this.
Uh-huh.
I am legally blind without my fucking contacts. I can't drive a car without the help of technology. Do you understand how limiting that is for you people who can see just fine?
And I'm not that bad. In terms of my glasses, I can function without them. I just can't read stuff. I can function without them. That's why sometimes in videos you see me without them. Because if I'm just sitting there talking about a movie, I can function fine without my glasses.
Yeah, if you
Uh,
see me without them, I got on contacts. I can't see shit.
yeah, no,
I see the world like the virtual boy.
I'm sure as time goes on, my eyes will get worse like that. But like now though, like because it has in the past 10 years, it's gotten.
Damn. So you did visit that shrink I told you to visit, who sent you to that psychic who told you eventually in Amsterdam that crazy person's gonna chop your eyes out. Damn, Brad, you weren't supposed to do that.
All I when they told me that, all I heard was Amsterdam.
We'll reenact that whole scene from Bram Stoker's Dracula,
Hmm.
and then we'll dance to Wolf, whatever that fucking Cool Jar guy's name was, because I love that soundtrack, but I can't pronounce his name for shit.
I'm quite disappointed actually that I don't get to do the Buffalo Bill tux.
Oh yeah, we both volunteered for Spoonie, but he's
Yeah.
decided to do it himself. We were both gonna go, I'd fuck me.
You fuck me, or fuck me.
I mean, it's not too hard to picture either of us just going ahead and doing that just for the hell of it.
Especially after that DVD I put out, that's nothing.
Yeah,
I didn't get that tweet from Spoonie until the next morning because when he tweeted me about that, I was asleep, and it was like, "Will you do I need someone to do the Buffalo Bill tuck scene, and if you don't do it, I have to do it." And I responded and was like, "Spoonie, do you even have to ask? Of course I will. Why would I possibly say no to that?"
I actually had to post on my Facebook that it was a measure of great pride that I was able to send him that picture of me from my nude dance from Live Nude Geeks
Maybe
in a business context.
maybe I still will do that sometime. I do want to do, since I did the original, I do want to do a snob episode on the Maniac remake, and it plays Goodbye Horses in that movie.
That seems appropriate, and that's a movie that I've really put to the side. Like, this is something I have to check out. First of all, I've noticed that Elijah Wood's trying to be the anti-Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
Where he's had his big success, so now he's going to go ahead and do quirky little things.
Yeah.
Because it seems like, first of all, he's in Sin City.
He's not going to do Corvette Summer.
Well, is that not the movie that led to Mark's little facial trouble?
Well, Mark Hamill he was great in Britannia Hospital.
And Mark Hamill gets a bad rap.
He does.
In Return of the Jedi, that's direction. Also, the fact that for some odd reason that movie has an abnormal amount of ADR. If you watch the scene carefully, you see in several scenes the lines have been changed. It's almost Japanese in certain parts.
I thought he was badass in Return of the Jedi.
I bought him almost as badass. First of all, the supercut haircut didn't work for me. I did dig the whole wearing black thing to imply that he might be led to the dark side.
Yeah.
Of course, the moment that even people who hate Return of the Jedi have to admit is awesome, where he's about to jump into the Sarlacc, and he does his little flip.
Uh-huh.
Is a moment of supreme badass.
Yeah. I find him
But
totally
I
badass in
actually wanted more moments like when he first walks in with the hood on.
that.
And I also love the fact that they show Luke real quick in silhouette moving his fingers, and the two Gamorrean guards are like, oh, yeah. So for a
Yeah,
moment there, you buy him as a Jedi,
you'll bring
but then the script kind of lets him down.
you will bring Captain Solo with the others to me. Well, whoever wrote this particular episode of Dusk Till Dawn just needs to write the entire second season.
As long as they can avoid the pop culture references being so clunky, unless that's actually something they're doing on
And
purpose,
that's something that I can
I can
learn
live
to
with.
that's something I can learn to live with if I don't have to go through like episodes 4 through whatever. Again, the episodes that pissed me off.
Yeah, because yeah, this one really was. It's breezy. It's incredibly well paced for a TV show.
It's
There are
great.
like almost no moments of dead air, and that's very rare on even shows I like.
It felt like I was watching a movie.
Yeah, it really, really did step its game up, and we kind of did predict that once they had the shackles of the movie off their back, that was what was probably going to happen because now they get to say, this is what this creative team is doing. I bet you actually the staff writers were probably feeling a little constrained when they had to add all that movie shit at first.
Yeah, and I love that it's showing us just what went down when Seth Gecko went to jail, how he got put in jail. Like
And they did it cool.
yeah, the mistakes they made and having to go back and try to correct the same mistakes but with vampires. It's really cool. And again, fuck me if I know where the next episode is going.
Yeah, I have no idea how they're going to resolve this, although even if he didn't plan to, I guess we got to just finally call it what we got to call it. If he didn't plan to greenlight his own show for a second season, since he does kind of have an invested stake in the network,
Yeah.
I felt a cliffhanger either way.
I was just gonna say, yeah, this will be a good time to predict how we think the next episode will end.
They probably escape and they find themselves on that ledge at the outside of the Titty Twister that's the Aztec temple, and there's nowhere to go.
I can see it being like
Or either that's going to be the halfway point of the last episode. I can buy either of those scenarios.
I can too because I really don't know what is going to. I have no base for comparison. I have no idea what what would possibly happen and what possibly won't happen.
It's
Like,
weird. You can actually almost point to one character in particular, other than Carlos, that shows that we don't know what's going to happen on the last episode, and that's the fact that Narcisio is still alive.
yeah,
Because he's going to be a factor. They would not have had that one random scene of him in this episode unless he's going to be some sort of determining factor in the next one.
do you think that the story is going to resolve itself, or do you think the story is going to resolve itself and season 2 will be about something completely different, or do you think it'll have what would possibly be like a downer cliffhanger ending, and then that'll continue with the geckos and whoever else in
The way
season
they're
2?
playing up Richie, it could go either way. Because right now, Richie, we're totally on Richie's side, despite the fact that he's a vampire.
Yeah,
Because he's selling it as, I'm still that whip smart guy, I
yeah,
just happen to every now and then gotta, rip into somebody's neck every now and then. But I'll probably get better.
yeah.
But I do feel that, and this was a theory I've been saving that they had in the comments, like all the way back in like episode 5, I think,
Yeah.
which is this concept of, I guess there's extended Dusk Till Dawn lore that's been authorized by Robert Rodriguez in like novelizations or comic books or something,
Hmm.
where we discovered that El Rey is in fact kind of a prison.
Oh, I remember you mentioning something
Yeah,
about
so
that.
I'm still wondering if it's gonna end with them heading to El Rey and then we discover someone we thought we did, hopefully Carlos, will be chasing them to El Rey. That would be enough for me to say I want to see what happens next season.
If it continues like this, then I'll be like, because yeah, a few episodes ago I was like,
Yeah, you were close to giving up. Ideologically, you already had a commitment, but
yeah,
if you didn't have to watch it, you weren't gonna.
no, I wasn't, and I'm thankful for this podcast because like I would I wouldn't have seen like the really good shit that this has been giving us right now. And
Yeah,
like
because right
right
now
now,
this is very, very unexpected. It really did go off in a direction that we didn't see coming, and it was enjoyable from literally beginning to end.
I would not have. There's no, like a few weeks ago, there's no way I would have stuck around for season two. There's no way. Now at this point, I'm like, you know what? Okay, I think I might actually give season two a chance. In fact, if the final episode doesn't fucking just piss me off, then yeah, I'll come back for a season two.
I was kind of dreading a season two if it didn't show me this kind of promise.
Oh my God! If it didn't show this kind of promise, I would have been like, "Fuck season."
Even like, okay, we're doing Fargo. Fuck this shit.
Yeah, I would have been like, "We're gonna pick something else." Um, but yeah, with the way that this is going, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm totally game for a season two. Like,
And I just have to
absolutely. I love even they this episode just proved me wrong on so many things. It's like one, entertainment value, two, clever writing, and also again like different twists it was taking.
yeah.
Especially like Jake Busey offering up a human sacrifice of Kate Fuller. Like, I was not expecting that.
Which actually, when you think about it, was foreshadowed as well.
Uh-huh.
Because remember, he tried to pocket the knife, and we just thought it was his overzealousness and obsession with it. But we
Yeah.
should have probably realized even then that was a little too obvious to
Yeah.
just be a throwaway gag.
Uh-huh.
And then the fact that we already know this knife has a certain kind of mystical power because several characters have used it at pivotal moments. The deputies used, I mean, the Rangers used it. Richie's used it. Seth tried to get rid of it and it magically showed back up. I guess we should have been actually noticing that. But I do appreciate the fact that I realized I did notice it. I
Uh-huh.
just didn't know it was important until about now.
And I didn't think it was when that happened, I didn't think it was foreshadowing because I didn't think the show was that smart.
Right. And well, that was their fault now, wasn't it? Because good God, I mean, we can't overemphasize this enough. Excise 90% of the fuller shit, and you have a very tight, streamlined show.
Yeah, I'm like not even kidding. Like if you watch this, you could so easily skip past a few episodes of this goddamn thing, especially if you've seen the movie. Like I don't know if you were mentioning earlier about the lore of the bar and everything like that. I one thing that one thing that makes me think that like I don't know maybe they would sidestep some stuff that's in like the novels and stuff like that is because they pretty much I mean this really is a reboot and they really did they they completely sidestepped from Dusk Till Dawn 3 and the backstory that Santana Go Pandemonium had in that. At least with specifics like the time frame and
I won't deny that El Rey might also turn out to be a sled.
it could it very much could. It very much could. But that's one thing that makes me think that like no matter what's been made or written in the past, that really all bets are off on
Yeah, and I kind of dig that. I mean, I've always been attracted to shows where all bets are off. I can name them off all over the place. We were talking about a couple of them earlier. I think about shows like Max Headroom.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think about shows like Crime Story. I think
Uh-huh.
about shows like, believe it or not, that one, was it called? Not Broadcast News, but it was something on Bravo with Clancy Brown. It was
Uh,
supposed to be a HBO series, but they didn't pick it up. And it was a show about, oh, I found a show Brad hasn't seen.
no, I don't remember that. Uh,
I know at least a few people probably do. And it was a really kind of gritty. It was way before whatever that show that they got, I think Jeff Daniels on now on HBO that I don't watch.
the newsroom.
Yeah, it was kind of like the beginning of that. It was like showing the reality. It was like the fifth season of The Wire before the fifth season of The Wire.
Oh, I know what you mean. You're talking about that Wednesday 9:30, 8:30 Central show.
Yes, yeah. See, there you go. Remember back when you actually watched Bravo? Remember back when they still like had like behind the scenes things on like North by Northwest, or they would or they would show the fucking documentary about Bernard Herrmann. Remember when Bravo was that,
So
not the Real Housewives of Who Gives a Shit?
so the pre-Andy dipshit Cohen days.
Yeah, It feels a lot like this happens to a lot of channels because Mystery Science Theater fans will know the name I'm about to say. She went by the name of Bonnie Hammer, and she was the death knell for Mystery Science Theater when it was very clear that the show was not going to get higher numbers than it was.
Uh-huh.
But it was getting respectable numbers.
Mm-hmm.
But no, her ideology was all shows must make more money the next year than the year before because that's obviously a stable and a reliable business model.
One of the many, 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 many sins of reality television. It's a cancer that takes over every single channel. It's an ideology cancer that takes over so many channels. Whether we're talking about Bravo, whether we're talking about A&E, whether we're talking about TLC,
Hell, whether
the
we're talking about
History Channel,
sci-fi now, I mean, hell, they have reality shows.
the History Channel, TV Land. How does that fucking make sense?
And for the record, we don't want to sound like those you're immediately just going to dismiss everything we say because we have a problem with reality TV. You have to understand that someone who creates shit for a while and knows how easy you can manipulate visual images, even on a low budget scale, first and foremost tells you that there is no such thing as reality in reality TV.
Oh Lord, no.
Secondly,
It's just a style.
it's a pandering style.
Uh-huh.
To me, once again, I think I brought this up once before, but it still reminds me kind of like that Maury Povich mentality, where the audience is allowed to point a finger and say, see, I'm not so bad, because they're worse.
You know what? At
Not
least
a mirror to themselves to say, no, I'm still kind of fucked up, and I don't need someone who's worse than me to justify how fucked up I am.
you know what? At least Maury Povich though keeps it to where has always kept it, in afternoons on weekdays when you expect trash to be on television.
Right. That time of day where you know you're pandering to a certain audience that you know is at home and will always be at home at that time for what you're showing.
Yeah, he kept it out of fucking prime time.
They did a real good job of applying what I call soap opera thinking
Yeah.
to reality TV because that's really all it is. I was fascinated with the real world when it first came out. The first 3 seasons
Uh-huh.
I thought was fascinating television. But because it was experimental, it's not that version we have now,
Uh-huh.
where there was a lot less to fuck with because they didn't know what they needed. Because they made a big joke about that. There was a big blooper reel after the first Real World where it became very obvious that despite the restrictions, several of the people in the house were having sex and nobody knew about it, and they were getting very openly drunk and high, and sometimes not on the show.
Mm-hmm.
But
The
then
90s.
something, yeah, but then people saw money in it. Kind of
Yeah.
like the music biz, kind of like the hip hop music biz, kind of like the movie biz. Everybody always says, okay, kids, sit down and let Uncle X tell you a little quick story. See, the music business wasn't really that popular, and it never worked in other media until this little album called Frampton Comes Alive come out. And that was the first, like, 10 million platinum seller. And then all these business people who don't know shit about music got involved in the music business. Then a couple of years later, this little flick called Jaws, and then the next year, a little movie called Star Wars comes out. And suddenly a whole bunch of people who don't know shit about making movies see money in it, and they get involved.
It's when we realized guitars could talk. Fuck. Nowadays we have fucking show about a guy named Barry going through people's junk, and the name of it is Buried Treasure.
You have to remember that the TV audience is not an audience you're familiar with anymore because you live in that generation that realizes I can control my media now.
It's true.
And that changed everything.
Yeah.
The only reason we tolerated this shit back in the old days is because there were so few options.
Oh Lord. Yes.
Even at the beginning of cable, people don't realize there was only like maybe 20 channels.
Uh-huh.
Slowly over time, the overproliferation of so many options meant that people who normally would just accept what was given to them
Yeah.
were going to find other options. Yes, we still have a generation of boomers who still turn their TV on to certain channels every time of the night, which is why we still have late night talk TV shows.
Oh
But
yeah.
let's be honest, how many times have you turned? I mean, except when that perfect synchronicity happens, do you turn on the Daily Show or Colbert Report when it's live, or do you catch it late?
I DVR it, but I mean, like I was always like that because I grew up watching Letterman. I
Yeah, I love those shows, but I do also understand that in today's society, they have to evolve beyond what they
well,
are.
I grew up watching Letterman, and even back then, back in the '80s and '90s, I taped it and watched it the next day. Me and my dad
I
did.
tended to tape everything because I wanted one, the options to not see commercials except ones that caught my eye,
Yeah.
and then two, to get to the good stuff. I won't even deny that. I probably fast forwarded through things that I had to go back and rewatch later as an adult. I mean, as a much older adult,
Uh-huh.
to actually get the gist because I had that option. And I accept that's how the world works now. And I always kind of dug. I know a lot of people don't like his humor style, but you can't underestimate what the hell Andy Samberg did on SNL with the digital shorts.
Uh-huh.
He brought that show into the new millennium with like Dick in a Box and things like that. He knew, yeah, we can have 90 minutes of sterling comedy, but if people are used to seeing shit in 90-second bursts, you got to think in those terms now, too, because despite what you're trying to do, that's how the world works now.
And if there's one, and this, and taking away what if you think he's funny or not, that's one thing that Jimmy Fallon realizes too. He markets stuff, he promotes stuff, knowing that
Yeah, he's got a
viral mar-
great social marketing
social
preference.
marketing, viral
From
marketing.
what I can tell, I think he's getting double Letterman numbers now, which is like shocking. He's getting Leno numbers.
Is he really?
And I like the antithesis of
Hmm.
Leno. First of all, he's got the roots, which just gives him so much leeway to do crazy shit.
Well, I don't. Rating. I stopped paying attention to ratings so long ago. I mean, fuck, ratings are not. Two and a Half Men gets higher numbers than Mad Men. So I
And
don't.
I get that, but I factor in on the late night audience when
Uh
you're
huh.
getting those kind of numbers in the digital society, it still kind of matters because
Uh huh.
technically Colbert and Conan have more pull with the younger audiences,
Yeah.
but because they're on cable, the Nielsen show them as like having maybe at most like a million viewers, which I get, but by the same token, it's such a pure audience. It always reminds me, and damn it, I'm getting tired of everything always taking me back to SNL back when it was like the shit.
Uh huh.
Back when it was truly experimental, that was what kept that show on the air.
Yeah.
Saturday Night Live was gonna be canceled. It back then, network shows had to have what was called a 30 share, which is another way of people in the business making shit complicated that doesn't have to be complicated so they can keep their jobs. So
Yeah.
instead of saying 30% of the audience, it was a 30 share, which was some sort of division of number of viewers versus no viewers in Nielsen and blah blah blah.
Hmm.
But they discovered with their first demographic report, they were the only show in the history of the Nielsen's that had a 75% share for the 18 to 49 demographic
Yeah.
ever. And that's the only thing that kept it on the air,
Hmm.
which I just find hilarious because now we're in this whole world where demographics are like, are they trustworthy anymore?
I don't know. I stopped following all of that stuff a
I mean,
while
think
ago.
about it. If you went pure demographics, you would say that Dusk Till Dawn would only appeal to people in their 28 to 39 demographic, possibly urban,
Yeah.
possibly, you should be selling Axe body spray and shit during the commercials.
Yeah, fans of the movie certainly who, let's see, that movie came out in what, 96, 95, 96.
95, 96, because Sci Fi Universe was still out and they had that awesome issue about it.
Yeah, yeah. So,
I
yeah,
miss magazines so much.
it's certainly appealing to that audience that saw the movie in the theater or uh, rented the movie when it first came out. Diehard fans of the movie who would be that age right now. Yeah,
About to say,
certainly.
because I have to think in terms that I'm not used to thinking about, which is there's a whole generation of people who didn't grow up on shit like that clamshell of Dawn of the Dead first, but they saw but their folks said, "Hey, George Clooney's on the cover. We can get this for the kids."
I still got that clamshell. I got that clamshell, the Madman one, and the Evil Dead one, the ones put out by the HBO clamshells.
Oh yes, the HBO. Was it HBO/Thorn EMI or something
Yeah,
like that?
something like that. I've got a few of them sitting over there.
I used to love when the logos had to fuck each other for their little crossovers and
Oh
shit.
yeah.
Seriously, we have no idea what the fuck's coming next week, and I'm very interested to hear your final thoughts on this one.
My final thoughts on this one, um, man, probably repeating myself again, but this was, even though I thought last week's episode was certainly entertaining, this was more than entertaining. This one actually kept me in suspense. This one actually made me really, really, really root for these characters. Um, this gave us like quirky side characters that have been missing for the past few episodes. This gave us a lore and a uniqueness to the bar that I haven't seen I haven't seen before. And when this show has tried giving its own lore to the bar, I didn't really care much for it and found it unnecessary. But this is like going in like Hellraiser directions. This is going into like Lord of Illusions, like that kind of
You're
style
saying
thing.
all the words we need to hear.
Yeah, exactly. This is like making it wildly unpredictable, and it's not making me groan. It's not making me think it's unnecessary. To me, it's coming across as just very a very clever twist on characters that we've known since the mid 90s.
This episode has made me feel like I feel like I can paraphrase Oliver Stone's Wall Street at some point. I'm sure somebody must have said something like this. They re-earned my investment.
Definitely.
I now feel justified for sticking it out this
Yeah.
long to see where we're gonna go from here.
And it's making me
And there's no. I find it impossible to believe that the last episode will be directed by one Robert Rodriguez.
most likely. It's made me forget about how pissed off I was at past episodes, which that's good.
Which I was hoping he was gonna pull a Michael Mann. Because
Yeah.
Michael Mann directed the second to last episode of Crime Story, but he didn't direct the finale because he didn't want that burden on his shoulders.
I
So he
can
did the penultimate episode.
I can see Rodriguez though being the type to where he would want to direct the final
Yeah.
episode.
But I'll say that, I know that apparently out there in the internet, they keep telling you that all we people on the internet do is complain about shit, but we seem to be kind of glowing.
Hmm.
I guess we're doing this shit wrong.
Fuck, man. This
Shit, I gotta rethink my life.
we're doing this episode totally wrong, man. It's gonna get the least amount of comments.
Nah, because we tangented enough. We figured it out, people. We figured it out. You guys don't want us to talk just about the show. Don't worry about it.
Throw tangents in there and everything. That's what we do on the midnight screenings. Speaking of, I got one of those later on tonight.
Yeah, you need to get going. Where am I found at?
Where
I'm
are
found
you?
at Mr. X Online, in your nightmares, and also in this little wacky site called GeekJuiceMedia.com, where apparently we don't know how to do it right, but I don't think we're doing it wrong yet.
Oh, there you go. You can find me at thecinemasnob.com, thatguyattheglasses.com, Blip TV, and League of Super Critics, which if you look at the comments on League of Super Critics, I'm totally doing it wrong because I don't shoot in HD.
Oh, heaven forbid. It wouldn't be like an exploitation director might intentionally retrograde his product for any particular reason.
I totally get the need to want to watch a review of Gay Racula in pristine HD.
Well, you want to see the pimples on the booty.
How else are you going to watch Debbie Does Dallas?
Damn straight. If you can't see the actual pubic lice moving, it's not worth me. Unsubscribe.
See you next time.
See you next time, folks.